myself. My name's Larry Cooley, and I'm a co-chair of this working group on monitoring and evaluation of the scaling community of practice. And for those of you who are new to the community of practice, let me just say a word or two about that. This is a group which was formed very spontaneously about 8.5 years ago. In all honesty, we had no idea if there was interest in the subject and who would want to join. Now, 8.5 years later, there are 4,000 of us from 400 plus organizations in more than 70 countries. It's a super lively group. If you're not a member, I heartily encourage you to join the group. It doesn't cost anything. You can simply go to the website, which is www.scalingcommunityofpractice.com. Put your name in, and you will suddenly and magically be part of the community of practice on scaling. I can tell you just a bit more about that community of practice. We've now run something in excess of 200 webinars, and we put out newsletters for these full 8.5 years. We're now up to newsletter number 27. We have a website, the one that I just mentioned to you. We do a whole series of thought products, and every year we get together either in person or virtually to have a big annual meeting to which you're all cordially invited. Last year, we did that in the form of 12 separate sessions over a 2-week period, each for 90 minutes. We try to time them so that if you're in India or you're in California, it's possible for people to join without having to stay up all night. And I think you'll find them very stimulating and I hope productive for you. One big change for the community of practice in the last few years is that we've now become much more explicit about trying to change practice in our field. We see ourselves as a field building effort to try to get more and more people in more and more organizations systematically applying approaches that will really improve the scale and the sustainability of the activities that they're associated with, whether they're donors, think tanks, implementing partners, or researchers. And we hope if you look at the website and participate in the programs, you'll find things for you no matter which of those groups you happen to be in. There are 10 working groups. This is one. This is the monitoring and evaluation working group. I'll mention the other 9 just in case you're interested. There's 6 of them have to do with topics, subject matter areas, like scaling in education, in health, in agriculture and rural development, in nutrition, in climate change, and in youth employment. In addition to monitoring and evaluation, there are 3 other cross-cutting groups. One looks at social enterprises and scaling through social enterprises. One looks at scaling up in fragile states. And one looks at the special needs and special impetus for trying to change scaling behavior in donor organizations. Today is a continuation of a long-term effort that the monitoring and evaluation group has, focusing on what it really takes to institutionalize the monitoring and evaluation and to track institutionalization of change practices within the organizations that are implementing, particularly government. And we're very anxious to have our speakers give us a little insight into that issue, and we're equally anxious to hear from all of you. So with that, I'm going to hand over to my co-chair, Rachna Chowdhuri, who will introduce the speakers and the topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry, for those opening remarks. My name is Rachna Chowdhuri, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Impact at Global Innovation Fund, as well as a co-chair for the Scaling Up Community of Practice M&E Working Group. On behalf of the Scaling Up Community of Practice, I'm really delighted to welcome you all to today's really interesting session. I think we have a number of participants today, so I'm hoping for a rich and interactive discussion. Our discussion topic today is on institutionalizing gender innovations within government systems, and we will interact with the Breakthrough India team on this theme. The topic of institutionalization through government systems, particularly of interventions developed and tested outside of the government, is something that our Scaling Up Community of Practice M&E group has done a deep dive into over the last few years. We have particularly explored the role and use of monitoring and evaluation tools in the process of institutionalization. The M&E working group has explored this theme through engagements like today's with nonprofits as well as donors and government partners as well. And for those of you who are new to this community in the audience, we have also produced a number of knowledge products, including a working paper that synthesizes learnings that have emerged from our engagement on this theme. You should have the link to the paper on your screens as well. While we have made really good progress on this and built a lot of learning and produced knowledge products, we wanted to really stick to this theme to really enhance our learning as well as to take this a bit further along and to continue to create this platform for more nuanced discussions on the theme of institutionalization. So today we will continue to discuss this theme and particularly focus on scaling in interventions that require norm shift and hence more of a systems lens for scaling as well. We have with us Breakthrough, a leading organization in India working on gender norm shift and gender equality through scaling interventions with government institutions. We have two speakers with us today. Firstly, it's Swati Chakraborty, who is Breakthrough's Director of Research and Evaluation. She has more than 2 decades of experience in research and monitoring evaluation in international development. She is an economist by training and has expertise in gender education as well as women's livelihoods and an extensive experience working with international organizations like ICRW, Oxfam, and CORD. She also has a number of publications to her credit. Our second speaker is Yogita Verma, who leads communications and resource mobilization at Breakthrough as a senior advisor, where she is highly inspired by the organization's mission to make violence and discrimination against and girls unacceptable. In her current role, she is deeply involved in Breakthrough's work on transforming social norms that perpetuate violence and inequity. Prior to joining Breakthrough, she headed resource mobilization at CRY, as well as holds an MBA and has worked in the private sector at Nestle as a marketing professional as well. So with that, I will hand over to Yogita first to talk us through the process of and the journey of scaling up their programming in India. So over to you, Yogita.
Thank you so much, Rachna. Swati, could you share the slides, please? It's really an honor to be here today, and I'm looking forward to a really engaged discussion. So the way we're going to structure it is that Swati and I are going to quickly run you through a presentation that we've pre-prepared, but we've kept a fair amount of time towards the end so that we can, spend more time answering questions, having a bit of a dialogue. So yeah, if you could just, I'm going to dive into it. So Breakthrough, for those of you who are not familiar with the organization, we've spent 23 years working on norm change and really looking at norms which work on violence and discrimination against women and girls. And Breakthrough really has 3 broad approaches that we use to address these regressive norms. One is where we work directly in communities with adolescents and their families, community members, etc. And this we do in 4 states using the typical norm change model of the socio-ecological model, where you have the adolescent in the center, and then you have their communities, their families, their schools, etc. As concentric circles, and work with all of them to really see norm change around gender views at the community level or the village level. The second thing that we've done, second area that we work on is really looking at systems change and how do you make schools more gender transformative. And here we're looking at 2 partnerships that we have, one with the government of Punjab and one with the government of Odisha, to really scale up an innovation that started in Haryana, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then the third area that we work on, and often this is the work that Breakthrough is best known for, is our work in popular culture. So mass media campaigns that change attitudes and behaviors towards people's accountability or bystander action towards domestic violence, or change changing views towards gender roles, things like that, but really using media as a source or as a vehicle to impact people at scale and really have larger dialogues with them, really looking at large-scale impact. Next slide, Swati, thank you. So the innovation we're going to talk about today is Taaron Toli, which means Gang of Stars. And this is actually a curriculum that was introduced in 2013 in Haryana. The curriculum is a gender equity curriculum, and when we introduced it in Haryana, we introduced it into 150 schools, which covered 18,000 children. We started it with a partnership with JPAL and the government of Haryana, and the whole idea at that time was that we would work with boys and girls both together in grades across grades 6 to 8 over 3 years. And every 2 weeks, breakthrough facilitators go into the classroom, and this is part of like the school sort of timetable, not a separate slapped on thing, but part of their regular timetable. So breakthrough facilitators go in, spend 45 minutes every fortnight, and over a period of 2.5 years, really work at things like identity, questioning gender roles, looking at gender stereotypes, things like early marriage, etc. We conducted a 2.5-year RCT along with JPAL on this and looked at 314 schools, which was split between control and treatment, and covered 14,000 students. Move to the next slide, Swati. Thank you. So after 2.5 years of working with adolescents, both boys and girls, the results were actually fairly positive. We saw significant shifts in the gender attitudes and behaviors of both boys and girls, as the graph shows. We also saw that boys' behaviors shifted more than girls, and a lot of this we surmise is because while girls' attitudes changed exactly the same as boys, what really happened was boys had more social sanctions. So things like boys doing, household chores, or boys having more intergenerational dialogue or more intergender dialogue was possible because they just had more sanction, as opposed to girls who, the norms tend to be much stronger, even though their attitudes were more progressive. Another really interesting thing was that the effects on children from more sort of gender regressive homes, the most conservative homes, the bottom 25%, they started behaving like children from regular homes after 2 years of the program. So yeah, and also after 5 years of this intervention, so we started with an end line after 2.5 years. We saw these results. 2.5 years later, when we did another end line, we saw that the gender attitudes sort of persisted, and roughly 16% of the cases converted from being gender regressive to being more equitable. So we realized that while the innovation only happened for 2.5 years, the kind of effects persisted for much, much longer. And we continue to follow this cohort to see what happens in terms of fertility, lifestyle, etc., choices as they grow older. Transformation model where we talk, we reach over 200,000 adolescents directly with our Taaron Toli curriculum. But really what we've started doing over the last 2 to 3 years is we're partnering with the governments of Punjab and Odisha. We've introduced elements of our curriculum, Taaron Toli, into subject curricula. So for example, in Punjab, we've inserted gender equity elements into English, moral sciences, and social studies. In Odisha, grade 6 to 10, we will be looking at social studies, and we will be reaching across the 2 states, 30,000 middle schools, over 80,000 teachers are trained, over 4 million adolescents will be reached across these 5 years, and all this curriculum will be introduced into school textbooks. Students will be tested on the material that is sent to them. Yeah. In addition, Breakthrough will train mentor trainers who will in turn train, the 80,000 teachers. In order to make the entire system gender transformative, we'll also work with other stakeholders, which is your principals, your government officials, basically ensuring that they also have gender progressive attitudes and that this is really a focus area for them. And the idea is that as over a period of time, as students get more opportunity to see gender progressive behaviors demonstrated to them in classrooms, as they read content that's gender progressive, over a period of time, you start shifting norms at a generational level. JPAL is doing this evaluation. Swati, next slide, please. And before I hand over to Swati, I think one of the sort of the underpinning factors of this entire research and this entire scale up has been that research and monitoring is really a key pillar for us in terms of understanding challenges and really working our way through ensuring outcomes. So some of the key questions we're asking ourselves through all of this is, and teachers in particular, and this is really to say this is our biggest challenge. The original innovation was tested with breakthrough facilitators. If we're to deliver it through teachers, how do you ensure that they're motivated to deliver it as effectively and that they demonstrate gender equal behaviors? That's one. The second one is, how do we monitor progress month on month when you're talking about 4 million adolescents? How do you see whether you're actually progressing towards the outcomes? And the third one really is what is the incremental value of working with different stakeholders? So like over and above teachers, so parents, middle management, working with government officials. What is that perfect sort of package that we can create, which we can then hand over to the government and say, now you run with it? Swati is going to take over from here and really talk about how we're using research and monitoring to address some of these key challenges. Over to you, Swati.
Thank you, Judita. So going forward is how of India in this Punjab, where we are actually covering in 30 districts of Punjab and all the government schools of Punjab, and 23 districts of Punjab and all the government schools of Punjab. And for Odisha, we are covering 30 districts of Odisha with all the government schools. So Punjab, actually, we are doing the curriculum thing with for students 6 to 8. And for Odisha, it is all the students of government school from 6 to 10. Now, here actually we are not only having one big piece of evaluation, but several pieces coming together to ascertain that we have the best model for statewide scale up. And then once we complete the scale up, we'll hand over it to the government, specific state government, to take it forward. We have JPAL as a partner who is working with us for a long time now. So they will have an external evaluation where they will have baseline and endline to assess the effectiveness of the intervention, as well as fidelity to original RCT results. That is JPAL is doing. Now for this Odisha, we have besides 30 district of Odisha and 23 district of Punjab, we have also decided to two programmatic approaches. One where we are doing for all the district, there is curriculum inclusion in the school and the teachers training. That is happening all the 53 districts across the 2 states. Besides this, we are also having for 5 districts of Punjab and 10 districts of Odisha, where we are having, in addition to curriculum inclusion and training engagement with the teacher, we are also have train engagement with the middle management in the schooling system and the parents. So we want to see that how it makes a difference when we have that extra work with the middle management of schooling system as well as the parents. Going forward is that we are also, beside the 10 district of Odisha, we are all actually going to have also RCT with JPAL in 1 or 2 districts in Odisha. But we'll have 3 arms in this whole RCT. One first treatment line will be low-cost teacher nudges, rewards, and recognition. So that is in addition to the teachers' training and curriculum inclusion. The second treatment will have additional in-person visit by breakthrough personnel for training at district level. So first treatment one is a low touch, but second treatment one is a high touch, and then there is the control. Now for behavioral nudges, we are also having a partnership with Busara, where the specialist will actually develop these nudges with the workshop with the teachers to determine the barriers in the gender inclusion or the training or what they're facing. And the nudges will be piloted before getting into the RCT districts, few schools before JPAL implement them in the RCT district. Now, beside this also, we are not only having JPAL and Bushara, we are also that internal research and evaluation team of Breakthrough that will also have annual dipstick survey, but we want to ensure that how we are progressing with all the programs intervention that are doing. So, and we'll do it against the outcomes that we have decided to follow for this particular program. So we'll have an annual dipstick on that. And there is also breakthrough and breakthrough partners who are also will be involved in the whole program. So they will also have process monitoring. So in the process monitoring, we are having a self-reporting by teachers and monitoring visits by breakthrough personnel to a sample of schools across both the states. So this is something we have planned, beside a big baseline and endline. And to be briefly on what we need to have as outcomes at the end of the 5 years. So we hope that we will be able to see that more girls stay in the school longer. So generally there is in the school mostly 8 class 10 mostly. So we want to see that how they are staying longer and reduce the dropout rates. Also adolescent demonstrate more gender equitable attitude and behavior. Just Jogita presented that what our intervention from Haryana proves that they demonstrate gender equitable behavior, and this is also something we will measure over here, hoping to have it. And teachers demonstrate improved gender sensitive behavior and actions in the classroom. That is another important outcome that we are hoping for. And this is also, we also looking for some more gender sensitized behavior from other players in the education system, like school heads who are over there, and there is other block level development officer, mid management. We are also hoping to see those changes over there. Now, it's very interesting that when we are going for scale up, so there is a lot of learning. So Punjab, where we started first, we have a lot of learning and we're still learning while we are in the process. Stakeholder mapping is critical. So from our deep transformation work, we have seen that while we do the work with the adolescents, it's very important to work with the environment we thrive in. Unless there is an environment which is encouraging them to demonstrate gender sensitive behavior, it is very difficult to them to demonstrate more gender sensitive behavior. So in the school in the school education system, we started something with understanding of teacher and student, but we realized that we also need more stakeholders to be included. So that stakeholder mapping is very critical. Second is engagement with government officials on data availability and accessibility is very helpful. So we got engaged. We have a lot of interaction and follow up with the government to have the kind of data collection that we should do, and then what kind of platform will be right for data collection, what platform will be right to share the various documents after the teachers training, so that they keep on accessing those documents while they're delivering in the class. So that was very helpful. Use of government process and platform is not always very user friendly. So while in the process, we realized that while some platforms, government platforms, are very useful for uploading teachers' curriculum, teachers' training material, other job aids, but may not be very helpful in data collection and monitoring purpose. And piloting of tools is crucial. So experience with student survey, when we pilot the student survey and observation tool, we realized that when we went to the field, we have a lot of discussion with the government officials and a lot of understanding that these things will be, certain things will be done, certain things will be shared. But really, when we went to the piloting of the tools, we realized that it is important take time for piloting to ensure that your tools are working and you can capture the information that you want to capture and how to go about it. Finally, that leadership buy-in is very, very critical, because, and that is most important part to make the program successful. And then secondly, the change of government official is a big challenge. And this challenge we are actually facing quite a lot for the last more than a year in both the states, because once you get your buy-in with one set of senior officials and they get transferred, and then again you start the process. So once 2 steps forward and then 1 step backward, and but should have patience, it works. So that is the thing, and I think that's all. So any question, anything, hand over to you, Rachna, how you want to move forward.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you, Yogita, for such a rich presentation. And and actually showcasing some of the commendable work that Breakthrough has done on persistence in looking at government partnerships and scaling opportunities. I'll open up actually with some questions, and I'll also encourage the audience to put in any questions. We will have a specific section on Q&A later in this session, so I think it would be great to get some audience questions as well. But for now, Yogita and Swati, I wanted to actually reflect a little bit on what you opened with, Yogita, which is unlike interventions and solutions that sometimes are more technical in nature in terms of focusing on service delivery, gender programming has a very strong focus on norm shift and beliefs, and the sustainability of scaling is quite dependent on that. So while your model is quite interesting because it's also looking at delivery through education ministry and schools and teachers, what are some of your reflections on challenges that you have faced in scaling this up that might be specific to maybe gender norm shift related innovations, as opposed to perhaps some more technical solutions that are sometimes scaled up through service delivery mechanisms?
I could spend half an hour answering this question, Rachna, because we're in the process of scaling up and there's almost a challenge a day. But I think some of the key ones that we have faced, I think just from more from a kind of conviction building perspective on gender norm change, when we're working with government stakeholders and really talking about scale up around, changing attitudes, behaviors, and eventually norms, I think what does success look like is very nebulous. So as opposed to say a reading tool where somebody comes in and says, see, just before, they could read this and now they, they could not read this and now they can read this. It's very, very difficult to really demonstrate. And because gender norms change over a slow period of time, to really say in 1 year, what's the success you've seen? What are those interim markers that you can really demonstrate saying there is change happening? It's gradual, but it's happening, So that's the biggest one. So for example, what does girls' agency look like? It's oft repeated. It's something that lots of people talk about. But how do you pin that down to really specific indicators that you can then offer, saying in 2 years girls will have more leisure time, or girls will be able to have the choice to have mobility and go to the market on their own, and we'll be able to test that with students because there are these new views, or girls will be raising their hands more in classes or speaking more in classrooms, for example. So that's one. I think the other challenge is again, like when you have a technical tool, you come in, you administer the tool, you give it to the teacher, and she kind of administers it. Here it's not that simple. So the teacher is not just teaching curriculum, you're also working on her biases or her mindset. So a lot of our work really is prepping each stakeholder. So whether it's the government department, like the Department of Education at the central level, or the block officers, or the teachers, gender sensitizing them and really saying, what are your own biases that you bring into every engagement with students in schools? And how do you change that? Because you can teach something, but what you say in class and how you behave is really what students pick up. So how do you get teachers to, so while she's saying, gender roles don't exist, but if she herself, talks about gender stereotypes or behaves in a particular manner in her classroom, she's actually teaching two different things. So how do her behaviors in classroom kind of mirror what we're saying in the textbook? It's not enough to just put it into the textbook. So you have to work with the ecosystem to kind of change their biases, their behaviors, their kind of actions. And I think there's so much work we're doing on how do you do that? Like, should we send out fellows in every district who will work with, the school ecosystem so that you have a greater interaction, things like that. So a lot of, additional inputs, but training, and a lot of gender sensitization and self-reflection.
Great, thank you for that. And I think you touched a little bit upon the follow-up question I had, which was a bit more around use of M&E tools a bit smartly. So as you said that sometimes the goal is a bit far. Are there any interim or intermediate markers that not only in terms of actually shift in behavior for girls, but also for institutions? So is there something there that you've done? And I mean, you talked a little bit about teachers' motivation, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit, because I'm assuming you're interacting at many different points in terms of institutionalizing. So curious to know what some of those M&E tools have also been.
So I will take it this, Jagita. Yeah. So you know that for these we have told in the very beginnings, we are not only going with one baseline and one end line. So what we have done, we have a very many tools, more than one tools, one baseline and not baseline and endline tool. We have a teacher feedback form. So there is the teacher feedback form, which is self-reporting, and that is going to come to us frequently. So every teachers can give their feedback, how they're feeling, how it is going, where they're having trouble. So we can also keep in touch with them on a regular basis. Then there is also a observation form, which is getting used by breakthrough team members as well as partners. So when they're going to the field, they are actually looking at what is happening around, and they're also capturing those information, and then we are getting back what is happening, what we have to address to. Besides this, we have the annual dipstick, where we actually going to interact with the student as well as the teacher as well as the head of the institution. So there is a number of tools to capture many things which we aspire to cover in this whole program, and we hoping for positive change toward those things or reducing negativity of some of the issues. So then those are also captured in those tools, and then also we have the partners are also following up with like parentals engagement or school management committee. They are also in the through process monitoring, they also have implementing some of the tools, and they are also capturing what kind of changes or what kind of challenges are coming up, how it is moving forward. So tools, not a one single tool. There are many tools. There are frequency, there are due frequency. Those are getting implemented, and those data are getting captured and analyzed. And moving forward, whatever changes we need to do at our end, that was the way we are doing actually.
Thank
so
you.
Like, the teachers.
Yeah, go. Sorry.
So I'm saying that in the teachers, when we're talking to the teachers, we're also trying to find out how many of them actually allowing the girls to raise hand in the class. How many of them are allowing girls to go in more extracurricular activities, or in the government officials mid management, how many of them are actually making gender equity a part of the review meeting, how they're looking at those issues. So for every level we have put something, we are interacting with them, and that's the way we're trying to capture things for the program.
Thank you for those reflections. I think that's quite interesting that it's quite a complex M&E system with many different outcomes as well. So you're also trying to understand and ensure that the impact is maintained while ensuring that at different levels there's a feedback from institutions coming in as well. So it seems quite interesting. Before I open up to some audience questions, I'll maybe pass on to Larry to also ask a couple of questions to the team.
Thank you very much. I love the presentation. Thank you both very much for it. And I have a million questions, but I'm going to discipline myself to only one. I'm really interested in the partnership between Breakthrough and the government, and the role that evidence plays in that discussion, because clearly you're trying to change not only the behavior of parents and teachers and kids, you're trying to change the policies and the behavior of government. And we've had quite a bit of luck, I would say, in measuring changes in government behavior, like what happens to the budget and what happens to the personnel systems and what happens to the administrative oversight systems. But we haven't dug as deep as we want to yet on how norms shift on the government side, and how you would know if government attitudes on these issues were being changed, either at the political level or at the operational, at the technical level. And I'm wondering what you found in terms of the evidence to action connection between yourselves and government. The intervention is still somewhat driven from outside, but the intention is to transfer it inside. So the question is, what kind of evidence have you found is convincing to them, and who presents it, and how is that related to your partnership more generally with the government? I'll go off camera, but I'm very interested in the end.
Swati, do you want to take that, or should I? Or
Should you? I can add if anything I feel interested. If I think it is needed.
Sorry?
I say if anything is needed, I will add. I feel that anything.
Okay. So, Larry, that's a really good question, and I think we were surprised by how the entire partnership actually started. We went to the government of Punjab, and I think the basis of this entire partnership has, in a sense, been evidence. When they saw the result of the Haryana RCT, that was really what kind of, said was sort of the aha moment in the room. So when we went to meet the principal secretary, we shared the results, and because Punjab and Haryana are socioculturally so similar, there was this sense, and I mean, they share a state capital, and there was a sense with the principal secretary that this is evidence that is relevant to us as well. And if we could do this at scale, this could change things at a very the sex ratio in Punjab and Haryana, and kind of the success we'd had about, in the kind of value that was given to girls by parents and the empowerment of girls in Haryana. I think for us, it's an iterative process. One of the learnings that we've had when we're talking, speaking with government, is that firstly, we've tried to create sort of a joint team. So we sit inside the secretariat. So they don't see it as them coming in and implementing something. We have also ensured that we work very strongly with the second line. So the second line is almost like part of the breakthrough team, and we jointly problem solve. All data that comes from the field is shared with them. We're even looking at training their mentor trainers to start going out on observations and coming back to tell us what they're seeing, where they see a difference. So I think the joint ownership of the program, and really saying ownership at the highest possible level, is really what changes sort of the entire framework of actually even looking at evidence, building credibility for the data, being completely transparent. A lot of it, and it kind of goes back and forth between evidence and relationship building, evidence and relationship building. But the foundation really of it is, if it is a joint program where there's joint ownership, then the data becomes joint, and the kind of problem solving or action becomes joint as well. And we've seen that happen very specifically in Punjab. So when the reports and the feedback, etc., come, we go back to the secretariat. We speak with, the head of the SCRT and share the data, and then problem solve. Yeah, Swati, if you want to add anything.
I think this is most important, that we work with the government. We work whatever they have. Like we have working together. That making the gender curriculum is not a only breakthrough agenda. They came and they do it. We work together. Which subject it should be work with, how we can do it. So there was elaborate discussion for days, and after that, getting the curriculum done, getting their buying in, getting the changes they suggest, having those changes incorporated. So it is a lot of work together. That is what Jogita is saying, that ownership and togetherness, that is actually the key for getting into, and having patience for working with the government system. So it cannot done overnight. I went there and I got it. It doesn't go that way.
Thank you both.
Thank you for that. I'll actually now start with getting some questions from the audience as well. So I'll pick some of those up. One of them is a bit more perhaps for you to reflect on the details of the curriculum and some of the key pieces, and how your M&E requirements and some of that may have influenced it. I'll actually maybe add a small bit to that question and also ask how that has evolved across different states. The evidence initially for the curriculum was from Haryana, and you have adapted it sort of to different contexts. So a bit more on the curriculum piece, perhaps.
Sure. So the curriculum, we started, and when we developed the curriculum, we actually worked with JPAL in the field first to interview a lot of adolescents. And we did this whole concept of the implicit association test to actually understand what are the biases, what are the sort of, views and attitudes or barriers that, both girls and boys face in their homes. Also spoke with parents. And the curriculum was developed through that. We started out with 48 sessions. It's been brought down to 27, whittled down. And the curriculum basically is 45 minutes. It's play-based. It's not prescriptive. So for example, a typical session on gender roles would be Kiska Kaam, Kiska Naam. And I don't know how many people speak Hindi on this, but I'll paraphrase. So if it asks you, so for example, a facilitator will go into the classroom and say, so who cooks the food at home? And the students will usually say the mother. Who washes the dishes and the clothes? The mother. Who does the shopping? The mother. And then they say, okay, so if you were to go out and eat at a restaurant, who cooks the food there? And then they say the chef is a man. And then they say that, okay, so who usually washes the clothes when you give them to the laundry service? And it's like the dhobi in India is always a man. And I think the penny drops that work is not gendered. The gender roles are prescribed, and when money is attached to it, it becomes a completely different gender identification. So just a whole series of such interactive fun games is another where you have boys and girls standing together and saying, what are the opportunities boys have been given, what have the girls been given. So for example, when both boys and girls are born, who is celebrated more? So the boy takes one step forward. Okay, who gets access to private schools? The boy steps forward. And by the end of it, the boy is moved out of the room and the girl is maybe stepped forward only two. So you can see the sort of gender disparity almost in the room. So working on different sort of, biases, youngest mind, and getting them to almost question what they see at home. And almost a year later, you'll start seeing boys helping out at home, household chores become almost normalized. You don't see that, very like this is not my work, etc. So that's it. It continues over 2 years. Every fortnight, we also do assembly sessions. There's homework. And we also train 2 teachers in the school who we call the Dhruvtaras, and they would do the assembly sessions and the homework to make sure that the work continues. And what we've seen is when we work in school, the entire school transforms because they're so proud of how these girls have suddenly started speaking their minds. Some of them have started, playing professional sports, winning medals. Others are, writing more eloquently. Others are debating. They've all they start these little, school panchayats where the girls have suddenly become like the education minister and things like that. So it's fascinating to see what happens when you start opening young people's minds. And we can share copies of the curriculum for whoever wants to see. It's open source. We even have a digital version that we are open sourcing entirely. So anybody who wants to partner us on that, we are very happy to have you use our curriculum. Yeah. And sorry, the only the question you'd asked, Rachna, is how does it change over geography? So for example, in Haryana, we know the big issue is the sex ratio. So the focus was much more on valuing girls. When we move to say Jharkhand or Bihar or even Odisha, we know that poverty plays a big issue, as does early marriage. So a lot of the sessions would be tailor-made to that specific issues. So for example, early marriage would be something that we would have many more sessions on. Out of those 24, we would tweak the curriculum to make it more contextual. So the case stories would be, say, more tribal. From Orissa, they would talk more about, early marriage. And a lot of it would be because of economics. Whereas in Haryana, it's all about, gender-based violence and a lot more about girls just not being celebrated. Though the money, there's a lot of prosperity and access to school is no problem. So different scenarios.
Great. So what I'll do is I'll pick 2 questions and I'll mention both of them together so we can kind of have responses. They're 2 quite different questions, but one of them is just to link back to what you had mentioned about this relationship between, evidence exchange and relationship management in a patient way. I think that someone in the audience has mentioned that they've had quite a lot of challenges also accessing institutional materials. And, because for that collaboration, it's a 2-way exchange as well. So if you have any, challenges or experience to elaborate a little bit more on how to navigate some of the more government side information as well. And the other question is more at a community level. So if there are any religious or more myth-based, and I would kind of maybe talk a bit more around more broader backlash that you may have faced, especially maybe if boys and girls go back home and are trying to enact some of this. Is there any pushback from their own families or neighbors or communities? So I would kind of perhaps mention both of these questions and club them together and have you respond to both.
So Swati, you want to take the first one and I can take the second.
So first one is about, I thought I was saying the community one.
So the first one is more about the data from the government side in terms of access and institutionally collaborating with the government.
For Punjab and Odisha, we have not faced that kind of challenges yet. But you know what we have faced the challenges is uploading our own data and collecting our own data to government platform. That was, but accessing government level information. There are many information which is available online. You know, so like DICE data is available online. National Achievement Survey report is available online. So, and this specific information, we don't have any problem in getting them. What you have find problem with government system, like there's a specific app called Diksha app, which is used by the teacher, is very well. This app we found very useful when we upload the curriculum, upload the teacher document required for the teachers, uploading our own videos we made for the teachers training, or this kind of document, it was very helpful. When we tried to find out that whether Diksha platform can be used for collecting our monitoring data, because we want to make it sure that government also have all the data, access to all the data we collect, then we realized that it was not that user. But when we found it, we had a lot of interaction with the team over there who are having worked with the Diksha platform. But now we have to keep in mind also that any government platform is for all the stakeholders across the states. It's not only one specific state or one specific user. Any central government app or other things. And there are state government app, there are central government apps, so there are a lot of things. So there we have to find out a solution. And we took time to interact with the government and come up with the solution, which was agreed, because we can come up with the platform, whereas various digital platforms are available, but we need to get approved from the government to use those platforms and share with them. So that is where we had a lot of interaction back and forth and negotiation. That was important for us and we could do that. But for accessing data, so till date we have not got into any problem with that. That was available to us.
Yeah, just to answer the second question, which was about the religious impact as well as what you talked about in terms of backlash. So two things. One is we always use an intersectional sort of approach to all our programs. So we would take into account when we go into a community, you know, the caste difference. We would look at religion. We would look at, you know, so we'd look at socioeconomic other factors. So, you know, like I mentioned, in Haryana, slightly more prosperity. In Punjab, caste has really played out in a very big way, which almost surprised us, as you know how prominent that is. So both in our curriculum, we would really look at, you know, whether if we're in a predominantly, you know, say Christian or Muslim area, we would actually look at case stories, etc., which look at those and acknowledge it right through the content development. We also, because we're very, very cognizant that you can't just work with the adolescent in isolation. This adolescent sits in a home or a family within a community, and they're all hugely dictated by social norms. Our work, therefore, is highly, you know, focused on building that entire, you know, concentric circles of the socio-ecological model, saying, have dialogues with parents saying, do you value your daughters? This is the kind of aspirations they have. What, you know, what are you doing about valuing your daughters, investing in their education? Community members working directly with panchayat members and saying, panchayat is the local village administration, and saying, can you stand in public spaces and start talking about the value of girls' education, the importance of girls going on and having aspirations and having their own careers. And in these, and this is classical social norm theory, that when you do this publicly, then people start saying, oh, the public perception is more progressive than what I have. So they need me to start being more progressive. So village sarpanch or the village leader says, I think all girls should go to school and girls should look at, either studying further or working, then others also say, oh, that's expected of me, so maybe I need to. So you keep chipping away at it, but you do it in a public manner. And that's the only way to make sure that there's no violent backlash. Because otherwise, if girls go home and say, I'm not getting married, I'm going to find a job, there is going to be violence. We know that for a fact. So you do have to work with every layer, and which is why even in the systems change model, parental engagement and activating PTMs and SMCs is critical. That's a big component for us within it. We haven't just left it to working with teachers and changing curriculum.
No, I would also like to add one more thing over here. This is like when there has happened in the community, like we have entered a new community with the curriculum, when daughters are not allowed to come and attend those sessions, So our team over there, they also get the mothers in to sit in the session to hear what is actually they are hearing. So then again, the mothers then gone back and become full supporter of the daughters to come for those sessions. So their community backlash is always there for every intervention you take out, So these are also team also they are in the field are very well equipped to handle all those things and find out the solution immediately. So to how to address those things. So that is also is very much over there in our program area. We also do all those things.
Great. I know we're running out of time, but I'm just 2 minutes maybe on this, a quick response. You've mentioned your deep transformation work and the systems change work as well. And I mean, I know we're looking at particularly the scaling through government pathway, but it seems like the government piece is one that actually almost gives you the scale that's needed to influence many different ecosystem actors. So maybe just a 2-minute vision for that work. Maybe if you could give, I think would be quite interesting to hear.
So I think really the vision for us, and when we kind of started this entire thing of scale up, was like, what will a gender transformative space look like? And really, it is one where principals believe that boys and girls are equal and that girls should live out their aspirations, and they publicly state it. They look, so like, and also that they don't, like, corporal punishment is not something that they use. Like, they don't go about, like, boys are huge victims of violence, so that's something that they stem. Teachers start looking at girls and boys as equal in their classrooms, and since a lot of teachers are women, they question their own biases and also have value for themselves. So, for example, many teachers, when we go in for sessions, many of them even say things like, while I work here, I don't have any economic freedom. My ATM card is with my husband. So there are biases she needs to work through. So a gender transformative school is also one where the teacher is kind of, waking up to her own issues and is able to then bring in more progressive thinking. Your district and cluster kind of coordinators who do a lot of the training and work and coordinate at the school level, those people should be sensitized and say this curriculum is important. Really, it is about building priority for gender equity right through the school system, from the principal secretary all the way down to that last mile teacher or principal sitting in a school in some tribal district in Odisha and saying, across the board, we believe girls and boys are equal and that they can bring equal value and they both should have aspirations. And violence is unacceptable. So I think that's like the bigger thought for us. I hope that answers your question, Rachna.
No, thank you for that. I think that was quite useful to hear. And I think my takeaway from this is just so interesting because a lot of the starting point of your conversations has been evidence, and that's kind of what you're using as a key tool to continue to engage. But then at different levels, kind of embedding that in. And I really liked the piece on patience, like these are things both in terms of outcomes, but also government partnership is, you require that kind of persistence and push. That's, I think, quite interesting. A lot of the conversations we've been having in our own scaling up community of practice as well as M&E group is to really draw from different organizations like yours as well as actors to learn what it really takes and how can you use data and evidence to actually bring about that kind of more systems-wide approach for sustainable scale as well. So thank you so much, I think, for this very lively discussion and an excellent presentation. And this is all very ambitious. I know Breakthrough has a very ambitious plan going forward as well in the 2 states. And so I'm all the best for that. It seems like you have all the right ingredients in play for this as well to come together. With that, I think I'll hand over to Larry for a few final closing remarks as well.
That was an absolutely splendid hour. I can't think of a better way to have spent it. Thank you all so much for that. I'll just say a word by way of connecting this up to the ongoing work of the working group, and inviting both our speakers and everyone else online to be part of that. As Rachna mentioned at the beginning, we've been at this issue of institutionalization and the role of monitoring and evaluation in institutionalization for about a year and a half now. I feel like we've had some interesting things to say, and there's a lot more to be said on the subject. The link that was dropped into your chat box before reflected where we were as of about 6 months ago. We've had a couple of conversations like this since then. If I were writing it now, it would already be different than the piece that we wrote. And it's our intention to put out at least one more document on this sometime this year. To that end, we're going to try and draw on webinars exactly like this, but we'd also like to make sure we address any questions that any of you have that didn't get answered yet. And so if those of you who have a question or a thought or would just like to be part of this, would stay on the line for a second after we formally close. We're going to post a question. We'll leave the site open. Include your question, and we promise to take this very seriously. If more than that, you'd like to somehow stay involved with us in the process, we'd love that as well. So we welcome you to the community of practice if you're so inclined. We certainly welcome you to this issue. And once again, big thanks to Yoda and Swati for just a terrific presentation, and of course to you, Rachna. Bye-bye, everyone. Don't leave until you put your questions into the chat box, though. See you soon.